Hello ladies and gentlemen, I decided to do something slightly different for this video. These are going to be my initial thoughts on the new Thunderbolts movie. So I have literally just come in from the cinema after watching this movie, so I came up, booted up the PC, hit the record button, and decided to talk about my thoughts and feelings on the movie, my initial impressions of them. So this isn't going to be a scripted movie, so I might have a lot of pauses, a lot of stutterings. My thoughts are, they're not going to be all over the place, but they're not going to be as focused as they would be in a scripted video. I just thought that this would be a fun little side mini series to do where I just give initial thoughts on the movies that I have been watching, either in the cinema or at home, if I feel like I should talk about them. So anyway, I'm just gonna get right into it and talk about my thoughts on the movie. So I really enjoyed this movie. I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie, as most Marvel movies are nowadays. They don't tend to be perfect. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say that they're not cinema, but they are pretty decent movies. But this one is definitely up there in terms of quality. Like, I feel like Marvel have come back a bit from their earlier movies where they were kind of a bit unfocused. The tone was a little bit all over the place. It just wasn't hitting well with audiences. So this one I think is actually a really good movie. I think the character development was really, really good. Obviously, you have to kind of know these characters from previous movies a lot of the time. So, Red Guardian's in it, Ghost is in it, Yelena's in it. Who else is in it? Bucky's in it, and John Walker's in it as the Captain America. So, if you haven't seen any of those where they've been in it previously, obviously you might not know who these people are, but they do a decent amount of setting up the characters, or at least establishing the characters quickly enough so that if you haven't seen those movies or those series, then you actually know what the characters are about. So I think that was actually quite good in terms of establishing straight off the bat that these aren't the best people. They are basically just anti-heroes, which can be, I guess, if you've got superhero fatigue or Marvel movie, comic book movie fatigue, the concept of an anti-hero team isn't exactly new. So I can understand why some people might be not interested in this from the bat. Personally, I think I like them. I think they can be done really well. We're not going to mention Suicide Squad. But I think they're done really well normally. So in that instance, I think they did a really good job of. Okay, my cat just ran in front of my microphone. I think they did a really good job of establishing the characters for those that hadn't seen the previous installments, and if you haven't, then I don't think there's all that much that you're missing. Actually, I enjoyed some of the stuff that they were in and some elements of it. But I would probably, on the whole, recommend that you don't have to watch anything that they're in previously. Obviously, you're going to watch stuff that Bucky's in because he's part of the mainline series. But for everyone else, nah, you don't really need to. So yeah, this is going to be a bit spoilery. I am going to talk about some things. Obviously, I've just come back, like I said, and I haven't scripted this at all. So I'm not going to go over every detail because I probably won't remember every detail. But I think in terms of the story, the basic outline of the plot, I think it was really good. I think the fact that it sets up the fact that Yelena's kind of like bored with her life. She's very obviously depressed, very lonely, very not happy with the things that she's done in her previous life. She kind of wants to wipe the slate clean, and she's trying to be a better person. It's set up quite well, but she's still obviously shady. Well, shady's maybe the wrong word. She is killing people at the end of the day, but she's not exactly amoral or immoral. She's questioning her actions, and she doesn't want to do this anymore, but she's kind of forced to through her skill set and her circumstances to do this work. So she goes around and works for the main villain of the story, basically just doing some cleanup work, some dirty work. the idea that Elaine is working for Valentina de Fontaine. If you don't know who that is, she's a character from the comic books, who's kind of doing some shady things. And in the plot of the movie, she's basically I think she's being indicted, because she's the head of the CIA, and she's being indicted for doing basically a lot of very shady and illegal things. So she's hired all these mercenaries and these people who don't mind doing some dirty work to kind of like hide her operations and sort of tie up loose ends. And surprise, surprise, she manages to get them all into one room, and hoping that they would either kill each other as part of their own individual missions, or she was going to basically just burn her evidence that's in this room, and she's going to basically burn them alive with that if they didn't manage to kill each other. So obviously at that point they're kind of like forced through circumstances to work together. These heroes, these anti-heroes, whatever you want to call them, they're forced through these circumstances to work together in order to escape. That's where they meet Bob, who ends up being the main villain, turned good guy in the end. We'll get into that in a little bit. So they meet him, and he seems fairly unassuming. But what I liked about this movie in general is the theme of mental health and the struggle of depression, bipolar, all these different mental health issues that people have. So Bob basically gives hints to his past that he struggled with mental health, and he was an ex-drug addict, and he underwent these human tests that Fontaine was doing to kind of. He did it as a way to, on the one hand, improve his life, but then also, if that didn't go so well, it was there just as a drug fix. And obviously it ended up working because he's the only one that survived, and that gave him all these incredible powers as the Sentry, which he later becomes in the movie, but it's not quite established at this point yet. Like, if you know, obviously, then you know he's going to become the Sentry, but I'm not the biggest comic book reader. I've heard of the Sentry, of course, but I didn't know any of his powers, really. I didn't know who his alter ego was, like who his actual character was. So when I saw this guy, I didn't assume anything until I heard the Sentry Project, which is obviously what it was codenamed. And then I got, I remembered from what I'd heard that it was the Sentry. So they escape De Fontaine's attempts on their life, and then they end up on the way to testify against her in this indictment case, because Bucky, who is a congressman, so if you haven't seen the latest Captain America movie, in that movie Bucky is a congressman. He's a politician now. He's kind of given up his life as the Winter Soldier, so he starts the movie as a politician, and he's trying to indict De Fontaine, and he's trying to get all these heroes to testify against her, because obviously they've all worked for her. They know what she's been doing. They've been collecting all this evidence against her, like, without knowing it, really. So he's hoping to use them in the indictment. But then they realize that once they've captured Bob, and Bob is like a big threat, they all decide to go back to New York, storm the new Avengers building, which De Fontaine is rebuilding as her sort of secret. She's using it as her research facility and base of operations. So she's rebuilt the Avengers Tower. They storm it, and then eventually De Fontaine reveals this new Sentry hero that she's created, which is, of course, Bob. Then a fight ensues. They cannot damage him at all. He basically becomes God. He becomes Superman. And at which point, they kind of semi-set up the fact that he has a bit of a God complex already. He's got delusions of grandeur, and that kind of comes with his mental health. So he talks about, the good days and the bad days, and we can assume that on the good days, he has this very high self-esteem, and then on the bad days he doesn't have that high of a self-esteem and sort of struggles with that side of himself. So when he becomes Sentry, and she kind of grooms him into becoming the Sentry and sort of hypes him up as her top man, but then she obviously tries to control him. She's not doing it for his own good, she's trying to control him. He kind of realizes this, and then he turns against her. She mentions that she has a kill switch, so it's the way to. They basically do just kill him for a little bit, and at that point he becomes the Void, who's like this completely all black version of Sentry, and it's like Bob's dark mental health alter ego coming out. So obviously he goes around and starts disappearing people, and I really like this effect. If you didn't know, if you've seen the clips or if you've seen the movie itself, you may have seen that when the Void disappears people with his shadow powers, they kind of become like a really long shadow on the ground, and that was based off the shadows left by the atomic bombs being dropped on Japan. So then the Void becomes this allegory for sort of walking destruction and nuclear power, but also at the same time it's more mental health and like the inner darkness. So it is definitely more mental health. It's not like technically anti-nuclear war, not technically anti-nuclear weapons. They just use that imagery to further the allegory of how destructive mental health can be to a person, which I really liked. Obviously, as someone who struggles with mental health, I found this movie to be quite. It kind of spoke to me on a way that it might not speak to everyone. And I know that a lot of people obviously do struggle with mental health. So I think the idea that in the end, it's less of a physical fight between the heroes and Sentry, or the Void. It's not a physical confrontation. It's more of a allegorical confrontation. So the fighting that they do in the Void, in the shadow that the Void creates, is a way to bring Bob out of his depression and out of his darkness. It's not a physical confrontation, which I think is quite good for something that keeps in line with the themes of the themes that this movie is trying to look at and sort of depict and explore. Having a big, sort of physical fight between all of the heroes and the bad guy would kind of defeat the point of the movie. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about the mental health and how one can learn to cope with mental health with the help of friends. Because the post-credit scene, the very final post-credit scene, is revealed that Bob hasn't completely overcome the Void. If he turns into Sentry, then there is a possibility that the Void will come back and like those powers will overwhelm him and overcome him, and he will go back to that. So it's a very important message that I think a lot of people might not fully understand about mental health, is that mental health never actually goes away. Like, you can't defeat it in a sense. Like, obviously you have to be very careful with that sentiment. But there are ways that you can help cope with it. And obviously having a good support network, which is what the Thunderbolts become for Bob. They kind of become the support network for him. They show him that they're not going to leave him. They're not there to fight him. They're not there to be angry at him or, upset with him. They're there to support him and help him. And they take him on as a member of the team, even though he doesn't become Sentry and like he's not an active role in the superhero side of the team. He still becomes a part of the team anyway because they value him as a person. And I think that's a really important and a really good ending for this story that they were going for. So I think that development from Bob as a civilian to someone who becomes like a god and becomes a bit egotistical, and then all these powers overwhelm him and he lets the darkness consume him to become the Void, and then he ends up being dragged out of that through his own strength and relying on his new friends and family and people who have supported him and will continue to support him. I think that's a great message. So we'll have to talk about the ending. If you've seen any of the new marketing material, so after the movie came out, they released some new marketing material. It's come as no surprise that the Thunderbolts is actually, the asterisk in the Thunderbolts actually has a meaning. And that's because the actual title of this movie is The New Avengers. So the Thunderbolts, as they are called in the movie, at the end become the New Avengers. They become the new generation of Avengers. And the sort of end, the credit scene and the post-credit scene deal with the repercussions of that. So obviously there's a lot of people criticizing them, saying that this isn't the Avengers that they want. You've obviously got Sam Wilson, who's Captain America, the official Captain America, sort of trademarking the Avengers, like the name. So if he decides to create a team and call it the Avengers, there's sort of like a funny legal dispute between them and the New Avengers. But I think it highlights both in universe and on an audience level this divide that people have been having about the current generation of Marvel movies and the current roster of heroes, and how a lot of people maybe aren't a huge fan of these characters, but nevertheless they are here to stay for the foreseeable future. They are going to be the New Avengers and the Avengers if well, we know we're definitely getting some form of other Avengers team in the next big Avengers movie with Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, and I think that's really interesting. And I kind of saw that it was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek way of poking fun at some of those fans that are overly critical of the Marvel movies. Like, don't get me wrong, there are things that you can criticize about these Marvel movies, and I have my own issues with the Thunderbolts film. Like, sometimes the editing was a little bit strange, the CGI looked a bit out of place, some of the humor didn't fully land for me. So there are definitely things that you can criticize about this movie and current Marvel movies in general, and I think that's completely fine. I think what this was trying to get at was those people who are basically people who are very, very critical of Marvel because a woman can overpower a man, or Sam Wilson is Captain America and Sam Wilson is a black man and, you know, is a black Captain America. It's sort of poking fun at those fans, and I put fans in quotes. It's poking fun at those people. So I mentioned earlier that Doctor Doom will be in the newest Avengers movie, which leads me onto the very, very final part of the post-credit scene, which is, of course, the revelation that the Fantastic Four are going to come into the main Marvel universe. So obviously we've had all the marketing material, or most of the marketing material, for the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. So we've seen trailers, we've seen clips, we've seen some behind the scenes footage. We haven't really, obviously the movie's not out yet, but the idea that it shows that they're still using the multiverse idea, because they say that they're coming from they're extra dimensional. So I think they are coming from a different multiverse, a different version of the universe. So they're going to hopefully join forces together with the current Marvel lineup, and we're going to have Fantastic Four in the mainline Marvel movies. I am so excited for that. And it's just this little rocket that whizzes by past a satellite, and as it turns to face the satellite, you just see the Fantastic Four logo, and that's it. It's brilliant. I really, really like that, and I get very excited when I see things like that. I can't help it, all right? I am a Marvel fan at heart. I know the movies aren't seen as cinema by some people. I know that people have spent their entire careers on YouTube and online hating on the Marvel movies for, you know, obvious legitimate reasons, such as, you know, Sam Wilson being a black Captain America, such as women being in the mainline team. All these legitimate, perfectly fine reasons for people to critique the movies for, and none of the actual, you know, criticisms that don't really matter, like, you know, bad writing, poor editing, bad special effects, none of that. We've got to focus on the fact that Captain America is now a black man. Anyway, that was just a little rant by me. Now, I am very excited for the next Marvel movie. I am very excited for Fantastic Four, and I am definitely going to see that. when it comes out in cinemas. So I said at the start, this was going to be a new, different style of video for me. It's going to be my unfiltered, unscripted thoughts on a movie literally minutes after I have just seen it in the cinemas. So I will probably revisit Thunderbolts later, at some point later, maybe, if the interest is there. I can certainly talk about Marvel movies from start to finish. I could go from Iron Man 1 to Thunderbolts and talk about them all day. But I just thought, for now, I'd like to start this little mini-series where I just put my thoughts out onto the Ethernet and just talk about my initial thoughts and feelings of the film. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If there's anything I missed that you want me to expand upon, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will talk about it. That being said, if you could, very kindly, subscribe and comment if you enjoyed this little video or any of my other content on my channel. That would be very much appreciated. You don't have to. I hate the fact that I have to ask for things like this, but I have to play into the algorithm to help regrow the channel because I almost killed it. So that being said, thank you very much for watching the video. Thank you very much for listening to my rambling thoughts, and I will see you all in the next big project.